the majority of the school district is in Wheatland Township. So on April 3rd, we do have a referendum coming up, and we've had multiple, actually really the last 2 years that we've been kind of in the process knowing that this was going to be coming. If you remember, in 2014 I was here.
Yep.
And we were in a little more dire straits at that point. And we've had a good story to tell over the course of the last 4 years. For those of you who have students, have relatives that attend Wheatland, we've done a lot of, I think, really amazing advancements in the course of the last 4 years. And I'm very proud of our staff, our students, for the wonderful things that are happening there. And I hope that you've heard good things. When we surveyed the public to get the ideas to move forward in this referendum process, one of the great things that came out of it was that the satisfaction for the school district is one of the highest in the state. When the survey company came in to talk about how Wheatland was doing, we're in the top 10 percentile in the state. So
I've heard nothing but good things about Mr. McKinley.
oh, thanks.
Being straight up, I've never heard a bad thing. So I mean,
It's a great staff, yeah. So what I wanted to just give you a little bit of background, a couple of things that I think people probably don't recognize or know, and just highlight a couple of the accomplishments that our students and staff have been able to have over the course of the last few years. Our outcomes for our students have improved. In comparison with the state, we're at least 15 points higher than the state in both reading and in math, and traditionally in the school report card the last 2 years it's come out, we've been either at the exceeds expectation or significantly exceeds expectation category, which I think is a huge departure from maybe how Wheatland was seen in the past as a school. We've had a huge influx of students. In the past 6 years, we've had over 100 students choose to come to Wheatland. So it's kind of become a destination district. We have students coming from Kenosha, from Racine, from Lake Geneva, from Brookwood, from really all the area K-8s, a lot from Burlington. Yeah, we've had a family that the whole time that they've been open enrolled has lived in Racine, so they drive out every day. Yeah. So it speaks to what I was saying as far as the program. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is because I wasn't a great math student, I was an English major. Our students have algebra, the ability to have algebra and geometry in 7th and 8th grade. So last year and the year before, we had about 15 students each year that left Wheatland with a high school geometry credit that articulated through Wilmot and through Central. So, where I took that as a sophomore in high school, these kids are then they're able to move that programming forward and take, classes in colleges in their junior and senior year. So we're really excited about that. Our STEM programming, which is the science, technology, and math, is preparing students for future jobs. I mean, we've got this huge tech advancement coming, to our east with Foxconn and Amazon and some of those huge companies. Well, we've got to prepare our students for those kind of jobs, and we're a leader in the state in the STEM field in engineering. People come to visit us for our programming, and the thing that's kind of been lacking is some of the facilities for that. Our students doing some of those programming, which I'll talk about in a second. We're trying to create a student who has the abilities to go and do things in jobs that aren't even created yet. So as in the next 10 to 20 years, the district and board has felt that they wanted to be proactive. I don't ever want Wheatland to be in the same position it was 4 years ago, where we're saying, well, we either have to figure this out or close the doors because we're unable to have a consistent financial program. So that's my hope. And so I'm here to you in a proactive stance. We're not in trouble financially. The first question on the ballot will be an operating referendum, and it's a continuation of the last operating referendum. So for 4 years, for the same amount at $625 a year, and that would go forward for 4 years. So it's basically a continuation of that. There is no scenario that I can see, unless school finance changes dramatically, that we will be able to function without an operating referendum. So this will be our 12th year of an operating referendum. So this will be our 12th year of an operating referendum. I'd like to say we were ahead of the game, but it wasn't probably 12 years ago when we first started having to do an operating referendum. I'm pretty sure that people weren't too excited about that because they thought we were doing something wrong. Now you've got Salem, Randall, everybody has had to make those changes and for operating costs. And one of the things that's interesting about that I don't think people realize, it's kind of counterintuitive. When you're asking for money within your budget, you're assuming that that's going to cost more for the taxpayers. Well, that's not the case. So the last 4 years, our tax levy has decreased each year. So it actually costs less under that referendum than it did 4 years ago. So it's about $35,000. Our levy this year, as compared to 4 years ago, was about $35,000 less. So that's not mill rate. So our mill rate has come down $1.25 in that same time. So most districts talk about mill rate because, you know, as property values increase, your mill rate is going to decrease. That's just the kind of way that it works. So most districts feel good about keeping a flat mill rate because the amount which is being taxed isn't anymore, but the levy could be more. We're one of the only districts, I think, in the state, definitely in this area, that has been flat for 4 years. So it's actually cost less for the taxpayers of this township. And that is the same projection moving forward, at least for next year. It's pretty hard to predict, you know, more than 2 years out because our biennium budget at the state level tells us how much financing we have. So the question one on the referendum, question one on April 3rd is a no tax impact. So no additional taxes will be needed to have that operating referendum again. So any questions on that operating side? Like I said, it's kind of the way of doing business for us in the future. Just imagine this. So if our budget is, our total spend is about $6.5 million. That's our yearly budget. If we had to take $625,000 out of that, you know, where do you cut? So $625,000 would be a lot of teachers, or a lot. We don't have that ability to come back down to where the revenue limit is for the state. So while it seems counterintuitive, that's a no tax impact or no additional increase in taxes.
But don't you lose state aid or something if you don't have this? There's something where you lose money because of the levy limits.
We can't control state aid. State aid from year to year depends on our enrollment, and that's our membership count. So we are in a slight decline for students in the district or within the township. And that number fluctuates year to year. We can't really control that.
But didn't you need this money? That's why your tax levy hasn't increased, because if you didn't get it, you'd lose some kind of money somewhere along the
Well,
line?
we would lose $625,000 each year, and if it didn't happen this year, moving forward, we lose $625,000 each year. So we have
Because of the levy limit on the tax.
because the revenue limit.
Yes.
Yeah, the revenue.
Yes, because
Yep.
there's some reason you have to have this, because otherwise you.
Yeah, it essentially just increases the revenue limit. And then the choice for the board is to do they levy to the max that is allowable. This year they chose not to. So we had the authority, or the board had the authority to levy another $125,000 this year, but because of the promises they had made 4 years ago to keep the levy flat, they didn't. So we under levied by $125,000 this year.
See, if we wanted to raise our levy limits, we'd have to.
For the referendum. Yeah.
Yeah, we would, in order to raise the top, because we're stuck that way too.
So when I said that the district is in much better financial shape, we've built a fund balance, which is something that's recommended by the state. It helps us for borrowing. It helps us to get a good rating if we are going to borrow money for facilities. We have basically 2 years of reserves. So in 2 years, we'd be back to that same spot. So that's question one for April 3rd. So the second one, all of you probably remember, those of you who've lived here for a while, 1999 when they built the middle school addition. So that we have paid that off this spring. It's actually, we sent it a couple of weeks ago. So that, and we paid it off a year early essentially. So that's paid for this year. So we've been planning, this is my 5th year here, so I've known that was coming. And we need to plan for what our facilities are going to look like for the next 20 years. I want to be proactive and not reactive. So in a reactive position, when things go wrong and you haven't planned for those, obviously you have no heat, you have no, your electricity goes out, those kind of things. So The majority of the facilities referendum is mechanical. The school is, obviously, there's been about 9 different builds to that school, starting in like 1952. There's been 9 different additions. The last one was in 1999, and that's the longest time that there's been no building or no construction in the school district since the origination in 1952. So there are some things, especially on the elementary side, that are needed. And like I said, of the $8.5 million that is on the referendum question, about 60% of that is mechanical. So if you look at that second page, as I'm working off of that, building infrastructure and site improvements, bathrooms need to be updated to get them up to ADA. HVAC equipment is the majority of it. That's about $3 million to get that where it needs to be. We have 110,000 square feet. So our cooling system, a lot of that's still pneumatic. And so we don't have control of our individual rooms, so it's not a very efficient system. And as those start to fail, you didn't have a projector, but I have some pictures kind of of that, and it's pretty amazing to see some of the things, like in the library, that is the original air handler, and you can't replace those parts, and it's in the wall essentially, so there's 2 of them, and it's amazing that they're still running, 60 some years later. So those are some of those items.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and they literally don't make it because we've had to actually manufacture ourselves some parts to keep it going. Tom Bowman used to do some of that. So, then our electrical systems in different places, we have to turn the lights on using the panel. Some of those systems are outdated as well. And then one of the major pieces is the safety and security. As you know, obviously that's in the news a lot right now with some of the things happening nationally. We have a secure entrance, but we don't have the kind of secure entrance that we'd like to have. As you look at Wheatland, you've got the 2 entrances, one in the elementary, one in the middle, and then when people come to the school, they don't even know the office is right in the middle. So we'd like to create a vestibule there that can hold parents, so we're not letting parents in before the end of the day to see their kids. In addition to that, cameras obviously are a huge part of what schools have nowadays. One of the safety issues that we have on the property is that during pickup and drop-off, we've got 3 lanes deep for pickup, and it's just not a safe. We've made some changes in the last 2 years, but we have more people picking up. I think you can call them helicopter parents or whatever. More parents pick up now, and we have 138 open enrollment students. So we don't transport those students, so their parents pick up as well. So the goal would be to extend the length of the property where that softball field is down there, so we can really spread that pickup area out so there's not 3 cars deep. We don't want kids crossing traffic or crossing in front of cars. Right now, that's just not the case. You can't do anything about that. So those are some of the pieces of the safety. Then talking about the science component and our STEM component, our curriculum that we've been really successful with, it's a different kind of learning. We need some bigger spaces to be able to spread out and keep those things. It's more project oriented. So when the architects came through a couple of years ago, they knew to build onto the building would be expensive, and that would be a non-starter. So they looked at our current spaces, which are big enough to hold a collaborative space so that you can have multiple classes working together, so you can have those kind of innovative structures within our current educational practices, and then also be ready for the next few years. So flexible, larger environments. One of those is in the cafeteria. We'd like to turn that into what they call a maker space, and for our community ed programming as well. So that area would be used during the day by students, and at night it'd be a show place where we have our community ed classes, things like that. And so that's on that middle school side, if you can picture that. We'd still leave an area there for concessions in order for when we have events there, because it's a pretty big area. And then one of the things I forgot to say is that as part of that safety and security outside, we'd be expanding the parking to that softball field out there. We're very short when it comes to having school events. We've had as many as 370 cars there just this last Christmas pageant. And it's, again, a situation where we need to have more parking on that south side. So the classrooms are in there, safety and security, and then the library, which when we first came up with a plan and sent it out in our surveying process, the best solution that the architect had come up with is to move the library from its current location to where the cafeteria is, and then bring the cafeteria into that big space. That did not, people were not interested in that. And so the board went to the next phase, which something has to be done to that space for a lot of reasons. One, what I just said, that's one of the biggest spaces in the building, and it's very limited for use. It's got the second floor, which is all stick construction. It doesn't have an elevator, so it's not ADA compliant. You can't use it for kids. We just have storage up there. And to open that space up is a portion of this. So that would be, instead of moving it, you'd cut about $3 million off that entire referendum, which started at about $11.5 million. And then the other thing that we removed from that was the bus barn. So we wanted to build something so we could wash the buses during the winter. As you get salt on those, we never have a problem with the engines, those will run forever, but after about 10 years the bodies start falling off them, so we'd like to have, one of the ideas was to have a facility in which we could wash those during the winter. People didn't feel like that was a priority either, so we took that off as well. So the other pieces are things that the community saw as priorities. So the way that one works, that would be similar to the middle school, since that's paid off. There's some room in the current levy that will drop off, so we would take advantage of that, about $350,000 a year, and then expand that somewhat, which could then add on enough to accomplish all those projects. So it's $8.5 million is what the referendum question is. As you can see, it's in there, and that breaks down on someone's taxes to $48 per $100,000 of property, or $96 for $200,000. Obviously, you guys can do the math there. There is no perfect solution, but like I said before, the whole idea is to be proactive, so we're not waiting for things to happen. Because as you know with your homes, roofs go, those kind of things. I know I personally can't handle within my own current budget. I take out home improvement loan. That's essentially, this is the school version of that. There is no way that we can do these kinds of things without a referendum. So the state, in their wisdom, have said that that's something that you ask the local taxpayers for, and so the board has worked for the last year and a half to come up with a solution for that, and that's that facilities piece. So that's question 2 on the ballot on April 3rd.
So you mentioned roof. Is a roof part of this?
No, actually, our roof is in great shape. So since before I got there and then as I got there, we had a couple of really fortuitous. We redid it for about 4 years. So we had a warranty claim. We had a lot of hail damage, and so we had a warranty claim there, or an insurance claim. But then we also had a warranty claim. Some of our shingles were bad, so they redid a bunch of those as well. So essentially, other than the flat roof, which is over the gym, that whole roof has been done within the last 6 years.
Who do you get this money from?
What's that?
If you were to get this $8 million.
The $8 million is a bond. So we take out a bond. We use our financial experts. Barrett is our consultant, and so they would put it out to bid, and area lenders would bid on that, and we'd take the best rate.
3.9% is what you're guessing it's in there?
That's what the experts were guessing. I think it's going to be lower than that.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Way less.
Well, they're very conservative because they don't want to tell somebody that your taxes are going to go up $48 per 100,000, $48 per 100,000, and then so that it's conservative. Lots of times, what happens is when you actually get that, and that was half a year ago too that we were working through this process. Things haven't gone up as dramatically as they had thought, but right now, I didn't check today, but it's in the low 3s right now for that kind of lending.
We should be able to find a bank to give it to. I mean, we got a really good deal on last time we shopped around. We got like 2.5, I think.
Yeah.
2.25.
It's been a few years though too, and that might not have any.
You can still get money for 4% easily.
Yeah, it'll be definitely.
Especially if you're borrowing $8 million.
Right.
Well, I'm saying that's too much though.
I know it, but I'm saying,
Less than.
You
can lock it in for,
3.25 or 3.
Which would be awesome.
what's the length of the
20 years.
20 years?
Yes, it's a 20-year bond. That's what the estimate is there. I mean, obviously, we could have done more or less. It would have cost the taxpayers more to do a shorter time frame if we had the same, if we're looking at the same plan. So that was to spread it out over those.
How long was that last one?
20 years.
That was 20 years.
Yeah.
That don't seem like that long.
So the referendum was in 1997, the building was in 1999. So,
I see it paid off for them.
so I think it's really important for you guys to know kind of what this looks like. So obviously that's why I'm here. I've kind of been doing my, referendum road show. Brian missed it the other night at the fire station, but so you got lucky tonight. One of the things I want to say is that this has been an incredibly supportive community over the last 5 years that I've been here. I think that the school is a huge gem in the Wheatland community and has really been an asset to property owners. The last 3 years we've had our property growth, has been quite good, and I think that's going to continue. So this is one of those times where it's critical for us to plan for the future instead of being reactive, and so that's the solution the board has come up with. And I don't want you to think that a lot of work was put into this. A lot of nights, a lot of night meetings, a lot of conversations with architects. Sheer Construction is our construction partner. Trying to figure out what is this going to cost. What's the best way to do this. And so this is kind of the result of that.
So what's the enrollment numbers now?
We have 500 students in the seats today. One of the things that, just to let you know a little bit, part of the reason we've been able to build a fund balance and to not have the tax rate go up or have the levy increase is because of open enrollment. The legislators kind of put us in a box, and said, here's your confines, and frankly, Wheatland's done really well within that. So we've increased our programs, increased our outcomes for kids, and we brought in 138 students. So last 2 years, we have actually turned away students because it's not a good investment to bring in students, hire teachers, build buildings. That's not a good investment. It's a great investment when you can fill a class of 18 and put 24 kids in that class, because that's all additional revenue for everybody, for all the students. So that's what's worked really well for us. And so we cap it every year in January. We have our caps this year. And then in the fall, based on who we have enrolled, right now we're in that open enrollment period, and then throughout the year you can open enroll as well. And if, I'm trying to think, first grade next year it's a tight one. I think we're allowing 3 students. So if more than that apply, then it's a lottery system, and parents get notified of that.
My wife was on the school board when the other addition was built. There was 500 kids in.
Yeah.
So you really haven't gone anywhere other than, you probably lost some, gained some, but.
Well, we were under 400 7 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably went with it. Because I know the number, it wasn't real good.
Kids though, back then, most of the kids were probably district kids. Nowadays, that's not the case.
Well, there was district kids that were going to other schools.
Right.
And
Gained a lot
that's
from
slow.
St. Al's, too.
And they got kids.
Not as many as you think. Not when St. Anne's closed.
Yeah.
Prior to that.
Probably more than,
Yeah. Prior to that.
We had 123 kids up here one time.
Yeah. When St. Al's closed, I think we only had 3 students that came from St. Al's to Wheatland. Yeah. So just to recap on that a second, the open enrollment piece. So we've reduced the open enrollment out as well. So at one time there were 90 kids leaving. So that's money that goes to goes out of the district. Last year we were down to about 65. So that's a really hard thing to shift, because if you've got an older brother that's going to Salem and you started when Wheatland wasn't maybe doing as well, your younger siblings aren't going to then go to Wheatland and you're going to transport a kid to Salem to Wheatland. It's just not going to happen. So it's almost a generation of kids that you got to make that shift. So that's a tough thing. We've been able to crack that somewhat. So we've got about 66, 68 open enrolling out. And part of that too is that we have 30 square miles. We're one of the biggest districts, definitely the biggest district over here in this side, bigger than Randall, Twin Lakes, Riverview. Now Paris and Bristol are pretty big, and Brighton's big as well. But, you know, if you think about, you could be a lot closer on our easternmost border or our northernmost border to several school districts that Wheatland. You know, because our facility's so far to the south.